بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى يوم الدين. We would like to begin tonight's discussion with an Islamic law. And as you know, inshallah, Eid is coming. So the issues in the Islamic law about Zakatul Fitrah is important to be known. Inshallah, the following nights we'll be talking about Zakatul Fitrah. When a person has to pay, how much do they have to pay? To whom they have to pay? Whom should I give my fitrah to? So we were talking about these issues, inshallah. What is Zakatul Fitrah? It is an Islamic tax. It is a tax, a religious tax that everybody has to pay. Now we're going to go later on in more detail who exactly have to pay, but some people think that only those that are fasting have to pay. No, it is for everybody. If they're fasted or not fasted, and it's a wajib. It is a wajib, it's obligatory to pay this Zakatul Fitrah. It is some of the verses of the Quran according to Hadith mention the Zakatul Fitrah, but there's this narration that's interesting that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam has, that a person that if for you your fast to be accepted, you should give Zakatul Fitr. It has a connection with your fast. Even though it's not for fasting people, there's a connection with giving the zakat and accepting of fasting. When does it become wajib? The payment of fitrah becomes obligatory after sunset of the Eid of Fitr. We cannot pay it earlier. There's other things to do, maybe with other intentions, but paying it itself becomes obligatory and the night of Eid. And the fitrah should be kept aside and paid on Eid al-Fitr before Eid prayers, before Salatul Eid, or before midday for those who cannot say their Eid prayers. It is necessary to have the intention of that it's going to be taqarrub or imtithal al-am, that it is for Allah. To have this intention that it is a command of Allah and I'm fulfilling the command of God, or I'm doing this to seek nearness to Him, taqarrub. So that we can learn our Islamic law and act upon it, please recite a salawat. We were talking about the topic of ubudiyat, being a slave of Allah. And this topic is a very pivotal topic. It's very significant. If a person understands this, has this outlook in life, his or her life will be much different if they understand ubudiyat and they understand mawlawiyat of God. When we live life, God gives us challenges. He puts tests for us. And it is in those challenges and those tests that we can actually prove who we are. We can show who we are in those times of difficulty. And that is what I want to talk about tonight, is that sometimes we limit ubudiyat or being a slave of Allah to only worship and only salat and saum. But what about being an abd when it comes to other aspects of my life? Should I not be an abd? Should I not submit to Allah? In one of those cases that is a person might show the most that they're an abd and might be tested the most is marriage. In marriage, a person will show himself. Because a man has different layers. People might see my exterior layer and they say, what a good Sayyid, what a good Shaykh, wow, he's so pious. But my wife might see my inner layer. My kids will see my inner. I can't hide from them. I can't lie to them. I live with them. So it is when you show your inside, when you show your inner layer, that is when you are tested the most. That is when you can show if you're an abd of Allah or if you're not an abd of Allah. So tonight we're going to talk about marriage. We're going to talk about, for those that are not married, they should listen. And even if they're very young and they're not thinking about marriage yet, it's very important for them to listen. Even if we are married, it's important to listen, because maybe now we can have a different outlook on marriage. That marriage, with this new outlook that we're going to have, or this not a new outlook, this outlook that we should have, we want to become an abd, an abid, a slave, a worshipper of Allah in marriage, in ubudiyat. This thing which is so essential in human beings. And we change our outlook, that we make marriage an act of worship for us. We approach marriage with this mindset. And a lot of people, unfortunately, and we're going to inshallah mention this, that they come with the wrong mindset in marriage. They think that they're raised in dad's home, dad was paying their bills, mom was cooking the meals. Now they're going to go to be married and they're going to have a very good time. But it's not necessarily true. I don't want to be negative. I'm going to also talk about those that don't get married and how bad they are. It's the fact that we don't have the right perception as a Muslim. It's different when a Muslim wants to get married, because we have niyyat, we have intentions, we have ilm, we have ma'rifah, we have understanding. We have to understand this big obligation, or there's a big task or big project that Allah has placed for us. So that when we approach it, we understand that when I'm going to get married, a lot of it is going to be jihad al-nafs. A lot of it is going to be struggling against my desires and inclinations. Because that's what marriage is. Marriage is about managing your inclinations, your desires. It's not about everything the husband wants. He has to sacrifice. It's not everything that the wife wants. And that is why, unfortunately, many people become divorced. This isn't the only reason. There's maybe other reasons, and I'm not saying anyone that got had a divorce is because of this. But if we have the wrong outlook on marriage, and we're used to this comfort, the comfort of the home of my dad and mom, and I don't see marriage as a project, I don't see marriage as a worship of Allah and a place for me to get refined and get tathir, then I won't be able to complete my obligations completely. Because in marriage, there's a lot of barakah. Some of the narrations, when you read it, it shocks you. The ulama sometimes they say, do we have something higher than ziyarat? Do we have anything higher than going to the masjid or nabi? Do you have anything higher than i'tikaf? In some of the narrations it says, sit with your wife and family. It is higher than being in masjid al-nabi, higher than being mu'takif in masjid al-nabi. Your head starts to spin. That Allah has placed such great fadilat in marriage. And also the opposite, if somebody treats their wife or treats their spouse wrong. So it's very important to come with because we said we want to keep our topic, the topic of being a slave of Allah. Let's approach marriage as a slave, as a servant. Someone that wants to provide. Because when you're a father, when you're a husband, or when you're a mother, when you're a wife, you're providing, you're benefiting, right? And that is one of the great attributes of Allah. Rizq, you're giving them rizq. You're working hard to give them rizq. Who is Razzaq? Allah. You're attaining this attribute of Allah. Let's approach marriage as a Muslim should, as a mu'min should. Not a person or a society that their entire life is the nafs and desires, and they let themselves do whatever they want and hurt whoever they want and eat whatever they want and drink whatever they want. No, that's not the life of a Muslim. A Muslim manages these inclinations. So that we can begin, let's give a salawat. Marriage purifies us, I said. The narration from the Prophet, it's in Da'imul Islam, Man ahabba an yalqa Allah طاهرا مطهرا فليعتفف بزوجه. Whoever wants to see Allah tahir, if a person wants to see Allah pure and immaculate, come with Allah come to the Day of Judgment as being married. So there's this importance of being married, not somebody that chooses not to get married. And we're going to talk about that, inshallah. Marriage makes us a better servant. Some of these narrations you've maybe heard, and those that have heard it, it's good to repeat it. Al-mutazawwiju, an-na'im, a person that's married and is sleeping. أفضل عند الله من الصائم القائم العذاب. A person that's married and is sleeping, he is higher than, better than someone that is fasting and waking up at night and worshiping Allah that is not married. So you see this new outlook, or not a new outlook, this outlook that we should have, that I'm going to now enter, someone that's not married, I'm going to now enter another realm of life, but this life that I'm going to have now, I'm going to be equal. My sleep is going to be higher than those that are fasting and those that are praying all the time. You heard this, ركعتان يصليهما المتزوج المتزوج أفضل من 70 ركعة يصليها أعزب. A person that's married, his units of prayer that he prays 2 units is better than 70 units prayed by someone that's not married. So he's entering a different type of ubudiyat, different type of taharat, purity, that Allah now, His grace and His fadl and His mercy now is on this person after they get married. So it's something holy. It's something pure. We shouldn't destroy it, shouldn't corrupt it. Marriage gives us barakah. Many people, they think that, I don't have enough money, I cannot provide before I get married. It's interesting, it says when you get married, then you'll see Allah's rizq. Then you'll see Allah's provisions after you get married. And people that are married, they'll see this. After they get married, they see this barakat from Allah. That money that they had, it starts lasting longer. Might not necessarily be more, it lasts longer. It goes for the wife, it goes for the kids. It says as قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم اتخذوا الآن, get married, فإنه أرزق لكم. Allah will increase your sustenance. Rizq, my friends, is it only money? Rizq has a wider and more extended application, which is our spiritual affairs of rizq too. Maybe if you don't do Salatul Layl after you get married, you'll do Salatul Layl. Especially if you choose the right spouse. Even if you choose the wrong spouse, you should still do these mustahabbat. It isn't an excuse, right? And the worst, the narration says, the worst of those amongst you are your dead that are single. Those that have died and they have never become married. Again, when I'm saying these narrations, especially for, say, the sisters in the culture that we have, usually the brothers, they do, they come and they ask a sister to get married, especially in the cultures that we have. So sometimes it's not up to, say, sometimes some of the sisters that, I want to get married, right? Somebody has to approach them, somebody has to come to their family, especially in the culture. Maybe it's different in the West, but especially in other cultures, they wait for somebody to come to their family. These narrations, a lot of it's not necessary though, it's for the men, that a man should go out and get married, and also to encourage the sister too, because sometimes they will be so meticulous on some attributes of the husband, that he has to have this attribute, this knowledge, this degree, this education, that she'll make it so difficult that it'll be difficult for her to get married. She wants to have, all the positive attributes of a person, or the husband will wants the beauty, wants to have her, say, from a rich family. We're going to talk about that. From different, if they have these high expectations, and these expectations they make marriage difficult, and they get older and older and older, and then, alhamdulillah, somebody dies and they don't get married. But in some cases, in some circumstances, I'm not talking about those that they have the chance of getting married. They don't have the chance. Some people, they don't. Or it's not qismat yet, it didn't arrive yet, I'm talking about those that have a chance to get married. Please recite another salawat. So we want to talk about the steps for a person that wants to get married, the criteria that's needed for a person that wants to get married. How should they choose their spouse? What are the malak, or what does Islam say, or what does the Quran or narration say about who are good spouses for us? The first thing that a believing brother or believing sister should do is change their outlook and what they expect from marriage. And this is very serious. And I was mentioning this, that I don't want to make marriage something very negative or gloomy, but it is jihad an-nafs. It is going to be very, very difficult sometimes, because when people they have contact with one another. We're not sheep, right? We're humans. Sometimes we say something and another person might get upset. Sometimes, and I'm not saying that's a good excuse or not. That's not excusable. But in general, humans, the more they live with you, they have contact with one another. You're spending 24 hours sometimes with one person. So there's going to be more of a chance you're going to say something or do something that they're going to be upset. And they're going to say something and do something that you're going to get upset. They're going to want something because you're a group now, you're a team. They're going to want something and you don't want it. They're going to want to go somewhere you don't want to go. You don't want to go to your in-laws, for example. They want to go see their family. Or this was a joke, but in general, you see this jihad an-nafs, fighting of the self, and this ubudiyat, and one of the core principles behind being a slave is fighting against yourself. You see this developed in a husband and in a wife, because now there are stages in life. They were a child before, they're playing. Now there's more responsibilities. Now they have to think of themselves. They have to think of their future. So marriage is much different than maybe a lot of the young people. They think that it's going to be very enjoyable, it's going to be very peace. Even though the Quran has ayahs of the Quran about marriage is going to bring you love, marriage is going to bring you tranquility. This is all true. But we have to be realistic, that there is going to be fighting, there's going to be something said. Inshallah, there's not. Inshallah, nobody, their entire life, they don't say anything bad to each other, their entire life. But it's going to happen, it's normal. And they ask, what should I do? Something they ask the scholars, my wife tells me that you have done nothing good for me your entire life. And then the husband gets upset with all this. He says something in return. That is because we didn't change our outlook on marriage. Marriage is a place of struggle. Marriage, I'm controlling and learning how to control my temper. I'm learning how to manage my temper. I'm learning, especially when you have kids. And that kid, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, he's newborn and he begins to cry. A mother has to manage her. She's going to have sleep deprivation. She's going to be, this is going to be very negative. I hope people are not going to stop getting married, but this is a realistic approach to marriage. We should truly understand it and see how great though it is. Because with all this negativity that I'm saying, this negativity makes us grow. Allah, we said, He created everything, the jinn and ants, so that they can worship Him, so that they can be a slave of Him. Didn't we say that sickness and poverty and death make us, humble? So does trials and tribulations, and so does a test. Especially if somebody has a bad spouse or a good spouse. It will be very difficult and they will be humbled. They will be a true servant of Allah. So now, I said this. Somebody might get the impression that, so we shouldn't marry, we should be free. No, those are the worst of people. A person that doesn't want to get married is a person that loves his nafs or her nafs. Doesn't want to confine themselves, doesn't want to limit themselves. They want to do whatever they want. They want to be free. They want to marry when they're late. They're tired of, they don't want to go home and have to go home at a specific time. They want to be with their friends. They want to hang out. They want to have fun. That's the life of an animal. An animal wants to be free and eat and do whatever. Humans, we said our goal is to be a slave and servant of Allah, to be disciplined. And one of the best ways to fight against our nafs is to have a program, a schedule for ourselves. And marriage is that schedule, is that organization, is that nazm that we need. So marriage is, the core of it is this nafs, and fighting against the nafs is this ubudiyat. I remember when I was not married myself, and I had this scholar that I referred to. He was very spiritual. And I always thought that Islam and Irfan is always about worshiping, because he would cry a lot, he would worship all the time. But he told me this, and you come to the conclusion today, that nothing in terms of jihad and nafs, fighting your nafs, is like marriage, because it's happening all the time, right? Please give another salawat. In Al-Kafi, there's this narration that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says that the Prophet said, this is how a mu'min should be. A mu'min should be. A husband should be. Al-mu'minu ya'kulu bi-shahwati ahli. A brother, a mu'min, he eats according to the desires of his family. Wal-munafiqu, a hypocrite, ya'kulu ahluhu bi-shahwatih. But a hypocrite, he makes his family eat according to his desires. For example, he wants pizza tonight. Everybody has to eat pizza because the husband wants to eat pizza. Right? I'm not saying now one night or two nights. I'm just saying in general, some of the mu'mineen and believers, when they approach marriage, they think that everything has to go in accordance with their desires. This is in the narrations a hypocrite, a munafiq. A believer asks his wife, what do you want to eat? My kid, what do you want to eat? What do you want to have? What do you want to do? But that's what a believer does. A hypocrite is the opposite. He'll go out with his friends, he'll eat all this great food, and he'll come home, and maybe the wife couldn't cook, and say, what about us? They'll say, just eat, don't you have leftovers? Just eat whatever you want. Right? And that is another thing. They say the hypocrites, they eat alone, they're thinking about themselves. So one of the first things that we said, this is jihad an-nafs, that we should approach marriage as we're controlling our nafs. We're going to manage our nafs. We're going to manage our desires now. We're going to put it in line, especially the husbands. We're going to be leaders of the family. We have to see what our wife and children want. It's the wives. Maybe your husband wants to eat this tonight. Make it for him. Please him, right? It's not necessarily what you want to have. And that is where a lot of the conflict happens. Because we didn't understand this. We think that, okay, I'm going to get a wife and she's going to be a great cook, and I have a schedule for her to cook all these meals for me, for example. And the rest she doesn't know, she'll go on YouTube and learn. Right? No. We have to be in accordance with the desires and the will of our family members. A lot of the ulama, they say when a person gets married and they do the aqd, they do the nikah, they say, okay, now be at peace and get along with each other. And the person asks, is there going to be war? Is there going to be war that you need peace, that they keep saying? It's because people are coming, they're going to come from different backgrounds. And the fact that they're going to want something, they're going to think something else is more important, something else is more significant. The husband is going to think something else is more significant. They're going to have to visit family members they don't like. And the beautiful thing about marriage too is that fact that you have to hang out with rahim and family members, your own family members, right? That you might necessarily like. People that love their nafs, what do they always do? People that can't control their desires, they always escape and run away. They run away from challenges. If they want to hang out with the family, and family, Quran or Islam talks about Sila Rahim, they say, no, I'm not going to do it. I'd rather hang out with my friend Falani. Or the sister says, I like to hang out with her instead. Why? Because it's funner. I have more enjoyment. We get along better. But do you see the hikmat in Islam that Allah says, these family members you have, you might not like them, but they're rahim. Get along with them. This will make you be a greater abd. This will break you. This will make you humble. Do this for Allah, right? You might have to go places with your family members, right? And you don't like to go. But because of your ta'abbud, your ubudiyat, you say that I'm going to go where they go. Your wife might say something to you, and some of the narrations I've heard that sometimes a woman might say something to the husband. They might get emotional, or the husband might say something, and there they say, dude, basically taghaful, leave it alone. Pretend you didn't even hear it. It's not advised to then answer them immediately, you know. So going the first step we said is understanding marriage, connecting marriage with our other worships, making marriage a great worship for us. Why? Because we're going to approach it as a moment and we're going to be spending a lot of time. So let's understand the reality of marriage and understanding the fact that those that don't get married, that can, there are people that love their nafs and they love to just be free. And Islam is about being an abd and controlling and managing your nafs. When it comes to raising children too, the same thing. Raising children is going to be difficult. It's going to be a lot of times the father has to make sacrifices. Also, he's going to raise a child with the same mentality that they're going to have to be as somebody that is going to fight against their nafs. True, I'm not saying make it difficult for your children. They even say if you're very wealthy, you could buy whatever you want for your kids. Don't do it. Get them disciplined, have them get used to managing their desires, managing what they want. For example, I heard situations where kids get addicted to cell phones and tablets and laptops. At the beginning, what we can do is let them be able to use those things in the proper way, but in a certain amount of hours. 2 hours, 1 hour, 2 hours with guidance if needed, parental guidance if needed, so that they're not free 24/7 to do whatever they want. If a child gets raised in a way, and there's some narrations that says don't give too much love to your kids in a way that you're going to spoil them or ruin them. Right? Give them discipline, give them a schedule. The best way to fight against the nafs is to give the nafs a schedule. From this time to this time, after you've done your studies, after you've done your homework, you can use of this laptop or whatever you need to do, of this game. But to allow your kids from the beginning to be free completely is going to have a habit, and you will not have control anymore. So it's that environment. A lot of times also it's the parents being organized. When they see the parents and they're disciplined and they have fought against their nafs and they have a schedule, they don't do things spontaneously. They do things in order. They have a set schedule. Then the kid learns. A lot of the ulama, they say that some of the scholars, they say your kids will be who you are, not who you want them to be. They'll be who you are right now because they're learning and developing like you. So whatever you are right now, whatever spirituality you have, right, that's what our kids will most likely have, inshallah. One of the ayahs of the Quran that talks about this, that maybe some people say you're being very negative. Ya ayyuhal insan innaka kadihun ila rabbik kadhan famulaqi. O man, surely you strive to your Lord, a hard striving until you meet Him. This world is about striving from the beginning, and jihad means striving. Striving until you meet Allah. It's not a place of relaxation. And this same outlook of striving should be in marriage. We're going to be striving, there's going to be a lot of difficulty. There's going to be, especially when kids are born, there's going to be difficulty, we have to prepare ourselves for it. Or, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لقد خلقنا الإنسان في كبد. We certainly created man into hardship. Man has hardship. So let's accept it, but know that this hardship is developing us, is making us a great abd of Allah. It's humbling us. The second thing that we can do, second stage, we said the first stage is awareness. Is this false ideology or false belief that marriage is, there are areas of marriage that are going to be very sweet, there's going to be tranquility, there's going to be peace, but looking at it as there's going to be difficulty, and this difficulty is going to raise me and get me closer to Allah. The second thing, niyat. When we want to get married, it's very important you ask yourself, why am I getting married? A lot of times, people didn't have the correct intention when they're getting married. Because it is a big project. Why do I want to get married? What is my niyat? And there's two things about intentions. One is an intention that always lasts, And a person that makes their entire life, every intention, they make their work ibadat, worship, they make their marriage ibadat, they make their drive back home, everything becomes ibadat. That's called tawfir of niyat. They make their niyat, wufur includes everything. Then there's tas'eed niyat. They make their niyat high, very high. When they want to do an action, they make the best in niyat. They make the most sincere action. I ask you, brothers and sisters, in marriage, what is one of the best intentions in marriage? Especially if God gives us kids. What is the purpose of marriage? What will happen? What is the fruit of marriage as a child? One of the best intentions is that a person, they say, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have a family, I'm going to give structure to my life and in a spiritual environment, so a pure baby will be born that will be the soldier of Imam Mahdi, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajah. Please give a salawat. It's with that intention that is one of the most important things that the rest of the marriage, inshallah, will be great. And I'm not saying that I'm the expert in marriage or I'm expert in my own, but I'm saying these are things that I read in the narration. So when a person wants to get married, he makes his marriage an ibadat, and also he has a goal for himself. He has a goal to think of the future generations, because what shaitan wants to do is make sure the future generations, the marriage is going to be destroyed. Look at the narrations or look at how shaitan works. Doesn't shaitan make fights between wife and husband? Doesn't shaitan want to delay the return of Imam Mahdi, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajah? So what shaitan will do is he'll put fights between women and men, maybe make a divorce happen, or maybe make children that won't listen to their parents. So we have to be extra careful that one of the plans of shaitan is to attack the most instrumental structure we have in society, which is each and every home in the mu'mineen's family, their homes. So to have that intention of that I'm going to be a slave of Allah with marriage. I'm going to fight against my nafs with marriage. I'm going to raise kids and they're going to be servants of the Ahlul Bayt. It's like the story of the mother of Shaykh Ansari, that they asked her, what did you do that your child became Shaykh Ansari, Shaykh Murtada Ansari, that his knowledge was not comparable, was unparalleled. His zuhd and asceticism was unparalleled. His power that he had for marja'iyat was unparalleled. She says that I wanted my kid to be like Imam as-Sadiq alayhi. I had that intention, I want to raise a kid like Imam as-Sadiq, and became Shaykh Murtada Ansari. So that intention is very important. A pure believer says, I'm going to myself, my dad, my mom, my family, my money, my children, everybody be sacrificed for the Ahlul Bayt. Everything I have is for Imam Ali and Sayyidah Fatima, for Imam Mahdi. And this child, I'm going to have this for Imam Mahdi. This was one of the du'as they say the father of Ayatollah Mar'ash Najafi did. After he's kissed his feet and he caressed his face with the feet of his father, Ayatollah Mar'ash Najafi, the great alim, his father says, may you be a servant of the Ahlul Bayt. So this is a very important intention to connect. And this is the highest of intentions, is to promote and to, inshallah, help the reappearance of Imam Mahdi with our marriage and with our kids. I'm going to talk about some of the other criteria because we're running out of time. So that intention, sometimes in some of the narrations, it talks about a person that chooses a wife because of her beauty, only because of her beauty. A person that chooses a wife because of her wealth. And the narrations said if a person has this niyat in marriage, just for beauty, even though you should be attracted to your wife. Not saying a wife should be attracted to their husband. But just because of jamal or just because of beauty, Allah will not allow that person to find any beauty in her. Allah will not allow him to benefit from any of that wealth that she has. That intention is going to work opposite. just for beauty, just for wealth. Third thing that we do is choosing the malak and criteria, is choosing somebody pious, choosing somebody that is religious. They asked Imam Hassan alayhi salam, a man came to him and asked his advice about getting his daughter married. And Imam Hassan alayhi salam told him, marry her to a pious man. زوجها من رجل تقي. Find a taqi, find a religious person, Imam Hassan had. Because he, فَإِنَّهُ إِنْ أَحَبَّهَا أَكْرَمَهَا. If he is pious, if he's taqi, if he's God-fearing, if he loves her, he will give her respect, he will honor her. وَإِنْ أَبْغَضَهَا. Sometimes she might be somebody or have an attribute or they don't get along, he might end up not liking her, he might hate her. وَإِنْ أَبْغَضَهَا. Even if he hates her, لَمْ يَظْلِمْهَا. He won't do dhulm, he won't oppress her, he won't beat her, he won't hit her. Marry them to a pious person. But is piety enough, even though basically akhlaq and having good behavior is part of piety, but to separate it, piety, just going to the masjid and doing sujood and worship is not enough. The other thing is akhlaq. How are their manners? Are they ill-tempered or not? They asked Imam Rida alayhi salam, a person from among my relatives, they wrote in a letter, who is ill-tempered, he doesn't have good akhlaq, he is ill-tempered, has asked the hand of my daughter. They wrote a letter to Imam Rida alayhi salam. In marriage, what should I do now? He might be pious, but he doesn't have good akhlaq. Shall I marry my daughter to him or not? What do you say about it? Imam Rida alayhi salam in this letter responded, if he is ill-tempered, bad-tempered, do not marry your daughter to him. So investigate. They have friends, right? They have friends. And a lot of this, especially, I'm going to mention this too, a lot of times because in the society we live in the West, there's a little bit more freedom for a brother and sister to meet each other first before the family members know. And it's very important to always keep the family informed because they will protect you. They can give you good advice from the beginning. Because sometimes when somebody begins to love somebody, fall in love, they can't think, they lose their aql. Their emotions are too strong now. Always, they even say when you want to go to a big meeting or something that's important, say like buying a home or you want to negotiate, they always say don't go alone. Go with somebody else who can give you advice, because sometimes you want to buy this car or you want to buy this home and you want to negotiate because you really want to buy it, you'll buy it at a very expensive price. So this isn't a hadith or anything, I'm just saying this, you can go with your friend. Same way for marriage. Those youth that they end up meeting each other at the very beginning, let their parents know. The parents will be much more open-minded than they think. Second of all, the parents will see things because they're the only people, one of the most important people that care about them, that they want good for them, then they don't want to hurt their kids. To let them know and they will guide you. And also it's important to tell your family members so the family can see if they get along. One of the other criteria are to marry people from good families, respectable families, right? So you can do more investigation. And a lot of this is, and I tell you brothers and sisters, a lot of this, when you see in narrations and the advice that our scholars give is, do a thorough investigation. Not to hire a private investigator or anything, no. Ask the community, ask their family members, ask a thorough, have maybe enough time for the two people to see if they're compatible with one another. They might both be good, but you don't know if they get along, right? Allow that to see if they're compatible with one another. Do a thorough investigation to make sure that that person you're going to give, because one of the problems we have is they can marry one of our sisters or daughters, and there might be a situation where that person cannot get out of the marriage anymore, right? There are contracts. You can look into different organizations. They have contracts where you can put conditions, because in Islam, divorce is one way. It's from the man for the woman. It's an iqa. It's not two ways. It's not like marriage where it needs consent. According to to the Islamic law. But there are contracts now that make the woman a wakil, representative of the husband in cases of, say, drug addiction, in cases of him being completely awful, that she can now divorce herself. Because there are situations where a sister or some of the sisters in the community can get into a situation where the man doesn't want to divorce anymore. What do you do? And then they go to the marajah, they go to the ulama, and it's difficult for them. So at the beginning, there's good contracts. If anybody needs guidance, I can give them guidance. There are already set contracts for marriage that allows the shart and shurut that will allow a woman, a little bit more, can give her more protection. So the second thing we said is akhlaq. Choosing from a pious person. Fourth, being from having akhlaq. We said marrying from a good family, a noble family, and reason and aql, don't marry somebody that is, in the narration say, is ahmaq. It might be foolish, maybe, because you're going to ruin your child. Your children will be wasted. Look at their logic, look at their mind, also to see if they're smart, to see if also they don't do foolish things. And the final thing that I'd like to say tonight is that it is important to be cautious, it is important to be careful, but you should not get obsessed with these qualities that I just mentioned. When I wanted to get married, I was the same way. I thought that each one of these criteria, they had to score an A+, A+, A+ on all of them, or else I'm not going to get married. You don't have to marry the best person. You have to marry a good person for you. They might not have all of these qualities in an A+, but they're good enough. Overall, they have a good average. So look at each one in its own place and weigh all their qualities together, their family, their piety, their akhlaq, their adab, their intelligence. And then be careful, investigate, but don't be overly, vasfas or have an obsession about, marrying this certain, an infallible person or whatever. And in the narration saying, the end of time, they say if a person is too strict on it, just even a friend, they won't have a friend. If they're too strict on their actions, that this action is for Allah or not, they won't have an action. They're not too extreme on the other hand, that it becomes obsessive. That they get a good, and they have that intention. I believe if as long as they have that intention, that I'm going to enter marriage as a slave, not a slave to their spouse, no, a slave of Allah, that Allah wants to make me tahir and pure, and to make my salat increase, to make my fast increase, that when I spend time with her, it's as if I'm in the masjid of the Prophet. When she spends time with me and raises kids, she is a mujahid fi sabilillah. That this is your jihad akbar, that this is your greatest strife. It's not in the battlefield. Not that marriage is a battlefield or anything, but this, you're in the place of ubudiyat to show yourself, to show your batin. And the only person that will see who you are, believe me, is your wife. And they say, my teacher said this, he says, when you see an alim, and you see, because he was a teacher of the students, he says, when you later on become an alim and you become a great scholar, don't look to see if everybody is praying behind you to see if you're a good person or not. Look and see if your wife prays behind you to see if you're a good person or not. Maybe sometimes wives might not pray behind their husbands for different reasons, but in general, look at your wife and see, does she accept you as a mu'min? Because she has seen the core inside you. The other people has maybe seen your ammameh, your khaba, your abba, your clothes, your salamun alaykums, wa rahmatullah, wa barak. You've seen this, and they might have gone fooled with it. But your wife and kids know. So this is our outlook in marriage, inshallah. And tonight we'd like to do tawassul to Sayyid Zainab, salamullah alayha. Inshallah, this will help facilitate those that want to get married, those that are married and are going through problems, those that are married don't have problems, but they're not benefiting from marriage, they're not becoming more spiritual. So let's, with a salawat, now let's dim the lights. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal farj. Sayyidah Zainab Salamullah alayha was in charge of all the kids of Karbala and Ashura after Imam Hussein alayhi salam was martyred. Imagine how not only did you lose your beloved Imam, you lost your beloved brother. You lost your infallible brother, and in front of you, he was killed and beheaded in thirst. But now, you have to be strong, and you have to take care and make sure that the kids of Imam Hussein, the orphans now, that they can make it, that the trouble and tribulations on them is not too hard, because a child cannot bear too much. If they bear too much, what will happen what happened in Syria and Sham with Sayyidah Ruqayya. Too much bala that she lost her life in Sham. So in some of the Muslim countries, the birthday of Sayyidah Zainab is the day of the nurses, because she was the best nurse and caretaker of the children of Imam Hussein Salamullah alayha. She was alima, she had knowledge, غير معلمة, but she didn't learn, she wasn't taught. She had divine knowledge, Sayyidah Zainab. She had divine knowledge. Inshallah, with this Rosa, one day we will go to Sham, and there will be peace in Sham, and we will do ziyarat of Sayyidah Zainab Salamullah alayha. One of the places where Sayyidah Zainab, from all the great speeches that she gave, from all the defense and shuja'ah and courage that she had in front of these unbearable people in Kufa and in Sham, one of the places where she spoke and she began to cry, it caused the heartless army of Yazid to even cry. When is this? When Imam Hussein, her dear brother, is martyred, is shaheed. And she comes, and sometimes in some of the narrations she will say, Anta akhi, are you my brother? The headless body of Imam Hussein, are you my brother? What have they done to you? She comes and says, Ya Muhammada sallallahu alayka malikus sama. May the salutations of the angels be upon you. Hada Husaynun murammalun bid-dima. This is Hussein, he's twisted, he's fallen, covered in blood. Maqta'ul a'adha. His body is cut into pieces. This is Zainab talking with her brother Hussein. وَبَنَاتُكَ سَبَايَا إِلَى اللَّهِ الْمُشْتَقَى. Your daughters are now captives. I complain to the Prophet. I complain to Allah. I complain وَإِلَى Ali al-Murtada. My father Ali, I complain. وَإِلَى Fatima al-Zahra. I complain to my oppressed mother. وَإِلَى حَمْزَةَ سَيِّدِ الشُّهَدَاء. هَذَا حُسَيْنٌ بِالْعَرَى تَسْفِي عَلَيْهِ الصَّبَا. The winds are blowing on his body. The hot winds of Iraq are blowing on his body. قَتِيلَ الْأَوْلَادِ الْأَدْعِيَا وَحُزْنَا وَكَرْبَا. اليوم مات جدي رسول الله. Today my grandfather has passed away. Rasulullah has died. They have killed his children. Ya ashab Muhammada hada dhurriyatul Mustafa. Where are the companions of Prophet Muhammad? These are the children of Prophet Muhammad. Yusaquna sawqa sabaya. They are taking them as captives. Where are you, the great companions of Badr? They are taking them as captives. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Ya Allah, we ask you in behalf of the honor of great Sayyidah Zainab Salamullah alayha, facilitate the marriage of the brothers and sisters, inshallah. Give them good spouses, inshallah. Give them a great marriage, inshallah. Give them the fruit of having beautiful children that will be companions of the 12th Imam, inshallah. Ya Allah, allow us to make our entire life worship for you, Ya Allah. Allow us to be a great servant of you in our work, in our family life, in our worship. Make us also a companion of the 12th Imam, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين صلوات.